My name is Washim Sajjad. I'm working as an assistant professor at IARE, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today, I'm going to deliver a video lecture. The topic of my lecture is listening skill, enhancing active listening for effective communication. I hope all of you are doing well. So let's get started with this topic. So as you see, the title of this lecture, listening skill, enhancing effective listening for enhancing active listening for effective communication. Here, basically, and I will be dealing about the various aspect of listening skills. And while dealing with the various aspect of listening skills, and my main focus and will be on active listening and how and with active listening we can enhance our effective communication. So while dealing this topic, and I will also give some idea about the principles to develop effective communication with active listening. Now let's come to the content. So this is the content of my lectures. So first I will introduce the topic. I will give some kind of a background, and then the next topic is in listening as an art. What is active listening? Significance of active listening, listening versus active listening, basic principles of active listenings. So under this and basic principle of active listenings are this and role of empathy, role of open-ended questions, role of paraphrasing, role of summarizing, and conclusion is the last one. So now and come to the first point of my video lectures. So before starting with this main content and before starting with the main idea about listening skills, active listening, and some principle to develop active listening, I would like to give you some background and why and listening skill is very important in day-to-day life. Here we see that in today's workplace, individual teams collaborate to achieve goals, solve problems, and fulfill a common purpose, emphasizing the crucial role of communication. So as you know that in the present era, in the present time, and from the different place and come to city or metropolitan city and for the purpose of work and for the purpose of a profession where we can earn. So we come together for doing something to fulfill our common goals. And as you see, and in every metropolitan city and there or in many other, as well as in other workplaces in different places, and we see people come together and work together to serve a common purpose and to achieve a goal. But the problem is that, however, actually this diversity also introduced challenges. As you see that in people from a different and diverse setting, different diverse cultural setting and come together and work together. And here we have also challenges. Challenges is that, and with this and diversity, and we also find in some kind of conflict among us because of our different background. So each person and brings a unique background, education, personality influenced by their social and cultural environments. So it has these potentials, means in this and diverse culture also very challenging and for misunderstanding, confusion, and conflict. So within this and dynamic setting, active listening emerges as a key component for co-leadership and effective communication. As you know that we can solve this problem. This we can work in a team and we can work together when we have a good communication. And active listening and serve the main purpose of having a effective communication between all other stakeholders who are working together. So the role of active listening is very high and for effective communication. Well, other skills is also very important, your personality and your speaking skills, your writing skills, all are very vital part of our communication. But listening skills and play very vital role. So active listening promotes understanding and resolve conflicts, and contributes to high performance level and satisfaction among stakeholders, ensuring a harmonious and productive workplace. So for a productive workplace, and we need a active listening. We need to engage in active listening. Active listening is very essential and for a productive workplace. So now, and when listening isn't so much important, but in how we do, what we do with listening. Do we learn listening, or we are just very much in casual about in listening? That in listening isn't something very innate, so we need not to learn. So in the next topic, and I will be telling you about this. Listening is also an art. We can also learn listening. The active listening, we can acquire this and techniques of an active listening, and we can implement in our day-to-day life, and for to make our life and more easier and make a workplace and more productive. See, and while we spend more time in listening, which is a fundamental component for effective interpersonal communication, we receive little training in this skill. From our early days, when we receive formal training in other three communication skills like reading, writing, speaking, while listening is often and taken for granted. So and you have been observed that from our early childhood, and when we are in schools, and our education isn't much and focused on some three skills: reading, writing, and speaking, but in listening become left alone. Why? Because we think that listening isn't something innate, and listening has nothing to do with communication skills, because then it is, if people will learn naturally. But it's not like that. We can also learn and listening. Listening is also an art. So as you don't give much focus on listening skills, and due to this, and we can observe different levels of and biases among listeners, such as non-listeners, marginal listeners, judgmental listeners, and so on. So as we have with less focus for learning listening skills, and we also see that, and that also creating some kind of biasness among us, and it is because in our society we have a different kind of listeners, and they are not active listeners, and they are not good at listenings. So they are sometimes non-listeners and marginal listeners and judgmental listeners, and it play a very crucial role in their own personality. Like non-listeners are the listeners and who pretend to be and listening someone, and he may have a good eye contact, open body posture, and while listening to someone, the speaker, but in his mind, or in his or her mind, is and somewhere else. So physically, and he is present, and he is listening someone, but mentally, and he is absent-minded. So they are this and non-listener, and marginal listeners are partially absent-minded, and they sometimes listen and with and focus, and sometimes don't listen with and listen with without focus. So marginal listeners are on the basis of their intermittent listening, and they create their overview and for the speakers, and that create a very dangerous situation. So, and that is also a bias, and that also that also give a negative impact on that personality. And judgmental listeners are those and who are judgmental on the spoken words. They don't include, they don't concern about the emotional aspect, the context, and in which the speaker is and speaking and something. The judgmental listener and only made their own opinion on the basis of these spoken words. They don't include the nonverbal cues, the facial expression, the emotional aspect, and the context. So they don't include that. So this is what we see, that and there are so many biasness and while we listen in our day-to-day life, and we have a different kind of biased listeners like non-listeners, marginal listeners, and judgmental listeners. So now we can conclude that listening is not just a passive activity, but rather a skill that can be refined and perfected. So we can learn listening skills, and by mastering listening skill, transforms us from casual biased listener to active listeners. So mastering listening skill means and we can become a active listeners. If we become active listeners, and our personality will be changed. So as you understand and what is the importance of listening skills, as you understand now then what is the importance of active listenings. So listening skills are basically about the active listenings. So now we'll know in the next slide about what is active listening. Active listening is a very important thing, and we should know about that, and we should have some idea. We should also acquire this and acquire the techniques of an active listening, and to become a good person, to become a active person, to perform well in day-to-day life. So active listening, a pivotal concept. Active listening, a pivotal concept in effective communication, has its origins in ancient philosophical traditions that span centuries. However, its principles were refined and applied in modern context and by Carl Rogers and Richard Fershen. They coined the term active listening in 1957 in the paper of the same title. So, active listening is quite common. Active listening, the principle is of active listening was existing from a primordial time, but the importance of active listening is redefined by this and 2% in their paper, and the title of that paper is Active Listening in 1957. So, and they also define, and they have also given some idea about active listening. So, Rogers and Fershen write, I quote, active listening is an important way to bring about changes in people. Despite the popular notion that listening is a passive approach, clinical and research evidence clearly shows that sensitive listening is a most effective agent for individual personality change and group development. Listening brings about changes in people's attitudes toward themselves and others. It also brings about changes in their basic values, personal philosophy. People who have been listened to in this new and special way become more emotionally mature, more open to their experience, less defensive, more democratic, and less authoritarian. So, and with the idea that is given by Roger and Fershen, and we get to understand that active listening and play a very vital role. So people and who become active listener, and that also have impact on their overall personality, that don't only change their overall outlook but also and given some impression and for other for their personality. So active listening and change the active listening has an impact in overall personality in every concern, in every aspects of in every social concern. So now I will give you this idea of active listening with more clarification. So active listening is not just about hearing words. Active listening is not just about hearing words. So active listening more than and something what is called hearing. It means really caring about what someone is saying. It means really caring about what someone is saying, understanding different points of view, responding with thoughtfulness. So active listening is not a mere hearing. It goes and beyond the mere listening. It has this when you listen and we think about that and we ponder about that and then we uh, respond about that. And so active listening require a process. Active listening require a process. It's not a mere listening. So active listening hinges on three core components: hearing, interpreting, and responding. So you see that an active listening, I said that an active listening requires a process. So this process is hearing, interpreting, and responding. Hearing means when you sense the spoken words or the auditory element. And interpreting means when you think over and when you ponder over that and what you haven't already sensed. And responding means when you reflecting upon that and give some reflective response and your opinion and after listening. And that is called responding. So active listening require an active process that include hearing, sensing, interpreting, and responding. It involves understanding not only spoken words, but also underlying emotions and intention. Active listeners engage in empathic inquiry, ensure they fully comprehend and before offering thoughtful response. So as I said, that an active listening is a process. Active listening and that process require your mental energy, that process requires your emotional intelligence, that process also require your interest and for listening. So active listening is a process, is an active process. So and now, as you know that what is active listening now, and now we will understand what is the importance of active listening. Why do you need to learn active listening? Why active listening is so much important? Active listening is important in day-to-day life because it has this ability, it has this potential to give an positive impact in our overall life, and whether in family setting, whether we are in family setting, or whether we are in workplaces, or whether we are in friend circle. So active listening has a deeper impact, has a deeper positive impact in our everyday lives. So in modern workplace, an active listening has become indispensable, countering the challenges and posed by digital distraction and information overloaded. So as you know that, and in today's world, and we have so many gadgets and so many information and gadget, and wherein we can gather information. And but if you have to conscious, and if you have to choose, if you have to choose a way out and from this distraction, and we have to have these skills of an active listening, and it dismantle barriers and fostering trust and respect among colleagues. Leaders who actively listen empower teams and create environment transparent communication. As I have already discussed, and what is active listening, and this place of your emotional intelligence, the place of your interest, and the place of your concern has a role in it. So that's why active listening always play a role in fostering trust, respect, and empowering teamwork. So active listening is something that is very beneficial and for a collaborative work setting. So with active listening, customer interaction. Now, if you talk about the professional setting, see this and business setting, and that active listening also play a very greater role here also. And with active listening, customer interaction are elevated, resulting in higher satisfaction and loyalty. And conflicts. And as I already in the introduction, I have already told that, and we have in so many conflicts as we come from a different background and a different way, and we work many people and different people having different way of working. So we have also conflict. So conflicts are resolved more effectively as active listening bridges gaps and finds a common ground. And with active listenings, and we can find the common ground. We can find the similarities and between us, and where on the basis of we can connect. Active listening means knowing each other empathetically, knowing each other with concerns. And when we know each other with a concern, we have to use an active listening. With using active listening, we can know each other emotionally, empathetically. Then we can resolve the conflict among us. So now, and we have already understand that what is the significance of active listenings. So now, and get that idea more clearly, and I would like to give you this difference and between listening and active listenings means, and the general listenings versus active listenings. So if you can compare this and general listenings and with active listenings, and we can understand the importance of active listening and more clearly, and we can also understand then how you differentiate an active listening, which we are able to differentiate active listenings, and we can also implement in our everyday life and from family setting to workplace. So now let's see. Listening and active listening are two distinct modes of engaging with spoken communication, each with its own depth and impact. Both involve receiving auditory information, but active listening goes beyond mere hearing by incorporating deeper comprehension, engagement, and response. The primary difference lies in the level of engagement. In basic listening, one passively receives the spoken words and without necessarily processing or interpreting their meaning. It's shallow level activity. So the general listening is shallow level activity that may lack attention. So as you see that in what ground an active listening is and different from the general listening. General listening is just and simply a hearing. It's not like it don't require a process. It don't require engagement. It don't require attention. But on the other hand, active listening is opposite to that. Active listening can require a process that I have already discussed. So that's what the active listening is and different from and general listening. So now I will go into the deeper the difference. I will define this and difference in deeper level. So I have already given you the parameters and the difference and between basic listenings and active listening. Here you see the main parameter on the basis of, or the main point on the basis of an active listening is and different from the general listenings. These parameters are degree of engagement, means the way we involve in the listenings. So degree of engagement. So in this and constant, general listening is a passive activity where one receives auditory information without adequately and processing and interpreting their meanings. And in that constant of engagement, and if we see that an active listening involves not just hearing the words but also comprehending speaker's message and their context. It requires focused attention and mental effort. And if you look at the difference on the basis of comprehension, on the basis of the point comprehension or interpretation, and we find this and difference and come in, especially in the context of basic listening, comprehension is and generally limited. The listeners may grasp the basic or surface level meaning of words but may not fully understand nuances, emotions, and underlying messages. So in the context of basic listenings, and people may, or the general listeners, they can grasp and just get some very nascent idea about what is spoken, but they cannot connect emotionally. They cannot understand the underlying messages of the spoken words. But on the other hand, active listening places strong emphasis on comprehension. The active listeners understand not only the literal message but also the context, emotion, feelings, and subtle meanings and conveyed by the speakers. So here we see, if you talk about the comprehension, if you talk about the point of comprehension on the basis of, and if you differentiate and basic listening and from the active listenings, we find that the main crux is that this it is basically this active listening is meaning oriented. The active listening is impact oriented. So now, if you talk about the difference based on the point of response or engagement. So if you talk about this and talk about the difference on the basis of response, we find that active listening less interactive and dynamic. A mere listener may not offer any response, but whereas active listening more interactive and dynamic. A active listener responds thoughtfully and showing empathy, interest, non-judgmental attitude. So you see that in terms of a response, and general listener don't offer any response because they don't listen in carefully. They don't listen attentively. That's why they can't able to give a reflective response. On the other hand, active listenings listeners always and come with active listeners always and comes with a reflective response and without having any judgmental attitude. Non-verbal cues. If you differentiate in general listening from active listening based on non-verbal cues, based on the point of non-verbal cues, we see that in active this general listening gets distracted. General listener gets distracted easily and showing disconnected body language and such as lack of eye contact, maintain closed postures. So what are the features that we have already understand the various features of and general listeners. So and the all these features and eventually also comes under in the title of bad listening skills. So general listeners gets distracted easily, showing disconnected and body language and such as lack of eye contact, maintaining closed posture. So general listeners also don't show any positive and body language while listening to a speaker, whereas the active listeners use positive non-verbal cues, maintaining eye contact and open posture. Building relationship. So if you differentiate based on the point, and this is very vital, this one point is very vital, building relationship. So, and in our, as you know that in our day-to-day life and our everyday life is based on our mutual relationship, whether we are working at a place, whether you are in a friend circle, whether we are in a family settings. So that is basically based on the mutual relationship. And relationship is very important. But in this context, the general listeners may hinder strong relationship building. So general listening skill means and general listening may hinder strong relationship building. So general listening cannot and give you strong relationship building. And whereas active listening is a powerful activity for relationship building, demonstrate empathy, respect, trust, willingness to connect. So now I guess and you haven't fully comprehend this and the importance of listening skills and the importance of an active listening. So and we have understand then what is the specific features of a general listeners, and we also have understood and that what is the specific features of active listeners. So now and we'll go through the basic principles to enhance active listening. So now we have already defined and why, how, and what is important about an active listening. Now we will discuss about the principle to enhance active listenings, because it is, as we understood that it is most important skill and require for developing mutual relationship and cooperative workplace. So now we will understand, we'll learn the principles to enhance active listenings. So and I have and basically in discussion three techniques and three principles and to enhance listening skills. So empathy is one of the most important, and empathy play a very active role in the context of active listenings. So what is empathy? First we have to know what is empathy. Empathy is a genuine desire to comprehend others' emotions, perspectives, and experience. So empathy is something, and when we are genuinely concerned about in someone's emotion, someone feeling, someone perspectives, and so when we acknowledge someone perspectives, when you respect someone emotions, when you validate someone experience, so that is called empathy. Empathy always make a person a very good person and a well-developed person. And so in the context of listening, empathy and become a vital role play. So here we will learn the role of empathy in active listening. So empathetic listening transcends surface level of interaction, enriching interpersonal relationship, enhancing overall communication dynamics. This approach not only interprets the spoken words and but also underlying feelings and conveyed through tone, body language, and context. It involves comprehending, acknowledging the emotional cues, concerns, and vulnerabilities expressed by the speaker. And so we see that if you have this empathy, if you have empathy, first we have to know what is empathy. Otherwise, we cannot show our empathy while listening. So while listening is a kind of an activity, and that is not specially observed and directly in this and physical environment, like, and when you speak and we move our mouths and we speak, and when you write and that is invisible, but in listening is a very psychological process. So for that, and we need this an empathy approach of empathy, and with this an approach of empathy, and we can enrich our interpersonal relationship, and while communicating with someone, means while conversating with someone, means while listening to someone. So it plays a very, very vital role. So now we see that these key features of empathetic listening. Key features of empathetic listening. So empathetic listening is the part of active listening. So now we'll understand the key features of empathetic listening. The first parameter is reflective response. What is reflective response? Reflective response, and when you listen to someone and you ponder over and think over that and you respond thoughtfully. So reflective response is responding with empathy and by expressing understanding, that you understand the speaker message, and compassion, reinforcing a supportive and caring environment. So it also shows and it also creates, and when you can give a reflective response, and it also give an scope to have a supportive and caring environment for the speakers, and that the speaker can open up more with more satisfaction. And the next is non-judgmental attitude. So non-judgmental attitude is also the key parts of empathetic listening. So being empathetic, it means that you should be non-judgmental. And when you are non-judgmental, and while listening to someone and while listening to speakers, and it means that in avoiding premature judgment or urge to offer immediate solution, allowing the speaker to express themselves and without any fear of any criticism. So, and sometime, and we did observe that in our conversation, and some listeners, and they come with a prompt solution, and before finishing with this conversation, they come with this full judgment and full solution. So it actually make the speaker discomfortable. So, and it snatch the speakers and comfort. So the speakers and don't want to open up. So that's why it is very important to have a non-judgmental attitude, and for active listener means, and it also a part of the empathetic listening. The next is patience and avoid interpretation. Patience and avoid interruption. So being patient and avoiding interruption is very important while listening to someone. So it means allowing the speaker to express themselves fully without interruption, while respecting their need to communicate at their own pace. Involves maintaining silence, pause during conversation when needed. So it is very important to be patient, and when you are listening to someone. So when you are listening, you should not be impatient that, and you want to finish this conversation and quickly, and you just telling this you can finish it and quickly. That's not a good view, but it's an impatient nature. So patience is required while listening to someone. So and we can give a very good space to the speaker, and by avoiding interruption, like maintaining silence and pauses while listening to someone. We should give space to that person, to the speaker, and maintaining silence and pauses and during the conversation. And uh, the next is validation. Validation means, and when suppose and you are sharing your experience and someone are acknowledging your experience and also in connecting with their experience, and it calls and validations. So validation uh, it means that acknowledging the speaker's feelings and experience, letting them know their emotions are understood and accepted. That I have already said that, and when we and share our experience, and if someone acknowledge that experience and also connect with that an experience and share their own experience, or uh, so and so I must be feeling good. And if he do that, and if the listener and do that, so it give me a space, it give me a mental energy to speak more about the thing or the issue that and I am talking to someone. Cultural sensitivity. Cultural sensitivity is one of the most important thing that a empathetic listeners are and concerned about. So here, and cultural sensitivity means and being mindful of cultural difference and nuances. And as I have already told you in the introductory part, that we are in different cities, we are in different places and working together, but at the same time we have also bringing in some kind of an we are also bringing some kind of baggages and within ourselves, that is the educational background, cultural background, even sometimes it's also religious and background, and that also influence our personality. So here, and understanding each other is very important. How we understand, how we know each other, knowing each other can be possible and when we listen and someone empathetically. So it means this we can gather the information about the cultural notion, and when we listen someone, when you listen someone actively or empathetically. So this is all about the key features of empathetic listenings. I hope that you understood that the role of empathy, the role of empathy in active listenings. So as listening isn't something, is a psychological process. Listening we uh, cannot observe, and that uh, in uh, open context or in a physical environment, that I have already told that, and suppose I am speaking and you can see that, and I'm my mouth is moving and I'm making some kind of sound, and if I writing and you see my writing on the paper, but listening is in something always in submerged. It is iceberg in the sea. The some portion listening, the some portion of listening can be seen, but much of the portion is underlying the water. So as listening is basically a psychological process, so empathy is empathy play a very important role and to become a active listener. So now we'll discuss about the usefulness of empathetic listening. So why we need to do this and usefulness of empathetic listening? Because if you don't know what is the significance, what is the uses of empathetic listening, we cannot use it in our everyday context. So that's why I would like to, and I'm trying to give you this the various and points of an usefulness of empathetic listening. So the first one is enhanced relationship. As I already told it, and mutual relationship is very important in our day-to-day lives. So empathetic listening fosters deeper connection and understanding in relationship by demonstrating genuine care and concern for other feelings and perspectives. Conflict resolution. Conflict resolution. Resolution is another most important thing that and we face in our day-to-day life. So by listening empathically, individual can better comprehend the underlying emotions and concern of others, facilitating more effective conflict resolution and negotiation. So as you say that empathic listening is the part of active listening, or empathy means and when you express some genuine concern, when you have a desire to have genuine concern about someone's feelings, emotions, and uh, uh, and their status. So So obviously, and we have this with this empathic listening, we'll have this ability to know each other more better manner. So in this context, and we can resolve our conflict. And the next is in trust building. So trust building is very important in a professional setting, even though it is also important in our everyday life, but it is most important in the context of in our in the professional setting. So trust building means the what this empathetic listeners can play role in this and trust building. Like this empathetic listening builds trust and rapport as it communicates respect, validation, and willingness to emphasize others' experience. So as I already told you that empathy means, and that where you are genuinely concerning, and when you are genuinely respecting someone experience and feeling. So obviously, so and with this and nature you can with this and nature of and listening, and you can also build your trust when you listen to someone and empathetically, you can build your trust. And if you listen to your superior, your boss, and empathetically, your boss will trust on you. When you listen to your friend, your colleague empathetically, and they also believe on you, they also trust on you. Improved communication. So empathetic listening also improves communication. Empathetic listening promotes clear and more open communication as individuals feel heard, understood, valued, leading to more productive and meaningful interaction. So the last is misunderstanding. So as I already discussed in this idea in the slide before, that is in the conflict resolution, but in here it also reduces a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is a very misunderstanding takes place in a minor level. Conflict is a kind of misunderstanding, and that is in a higher level. But a misunderstanding is a very nascent stage. So we have a misunderstanding in our everyday life when we can people, friends, family. But by active listening and validating other perspectives, empathetic listening helps prevent misinterpretation and misunderstanding that can arise from incomplete or biased communications. So that empathetic listening always gives you the chance to complete your communication, because empathetic listening has this capability to understand other and more emotionally, more thoughtfully. So that's why this there is a less scope of and biased communication. If there is no biased communication, then you will have no misunderstanding, no misinterpretation of other messages. So this is what about the usefulness of empathetic listenings. So in the concluding remark and about an empathetic listening, I would like to say that therefore that empathetic listening is a powerful tool that strengthens connections, nurture trust, and fosters positive and supportive workplace environment. Its ability to enhance communication and understanding makes it indispensable skill for a professional across the various roles and industries. So empathetic listening is a very powerful tool to develop our and professionalism, develop our professional role. Uh, so with active listening, we can perform well in various contexts, and whether it is in family context and whether it is in workplaces. So this is all about empathetic listening. The how where it is all about in how to develop the active listenings and through empathetic listening. So role of open, and now the next important technique and to develop an active listening is lies in the role of open-ended question in active listenings. So open-ended questions have been employed in communication since ancient time, acknowledging their effectiveness in sparking meaningful conversation through thought-provoking inquiries. Unlike the close-ended questions, and which elicits simple yes or no answer. Open-ended question prompt individual to offer detailed and expansive responses, enriching the depth of communication. So you say that what is the importance of an open-ended question in active listening? So it is important because when, and especially our listening take place and when we are in conversation with a person and with a speaker. So as you told, as you already discussed that in the previous lecture, that communication always takes place and amongst two entities, and listening also takes place with two entities. We need an interpersonal uh, uh, communication and for listening. So where listening means that and you are conversing with someone is speaking and you are listening to him. So listening is a two-year process. Listening is a two-year process. So you are listening as well as in responding. So here and why this an open-ended question is required to develop active listening. It is because an open-ended question and gives the speaker more scope to open up. Now I'm giving you one example. Suppose I'm asking a student, have you finished your task? So, and if he will say yes or no question, yes sir or no sir. But and if I ask him how far and you are enjoying this task, so he will talk more about that. He will talk more about that, and he will talk about sir. And this way, I find this lesson difficult. This way, I find this lesson easy. This way, I find this lesson very interesting. So that will give him more scope to for say. And if I have to give another example, I will take another example in the professional setting. If and in a set, so it's like that, and a buyer is buying a mobile phone, and he is asking, and he is in conversation with the salesman. So if the salesman asks him, then what is your budget? So the buyer would obviously and give this answer and with very short and specific, like an yes or no, that 10,000 is my budget. But if the salesman asks, then what is your requirement? What is your specification for and buying a phone? So then the buyer will express himself more. So the buyer will express himself most, means the buyer will tell the specification that he required. So he has this scope to tell the stories. He has this scope to tell more. So this is how the open-ended question and makes listening more interesting, makes conversation more interesting. So now to conclude, and close-ended questions are for and getting quick and specific information, while open-ended questions make people think and share stories and give more details. So now, and we have already understand this the relevance of an open-ended question and how we can use an open-ended question in our daily conversation in various contexts. Now we'll see the key purpose of open-ended question in active listening. Strategically incorporating open-ended question into an active listening communication process serves several purposes. So if you strategically implement the open-ended question in our conversation, in our listening, so it also serves very specific purpose. Like I have already discussed, but I'm again summarizing all these things. So by asking open-ended question, and you show that and you really care about what the speaker has to say, and making them feel valued, respected. And when you ask open-ended questions, and it helps the speaker and talk more and think deeper, so listeners can understand the topic better. Open-ended questions promote a two-way dialogue, fostering a sense of collaboration and connection. In business, asking open-ended questions can be really helpful in team meetings and when talking to clients and when getting feedback. So in business setting, and we require this collaboration. We need this tendency to work together, because in business and we have to run in very large and corporate sector, and where we need a collaboration. So in open-ended question, we can actually make other colleague the colleague and who are working together to open up more, whether it is in team meetings and whether it is in talk, whether it takes place in the while talking to clients, and whether it is in time to getting feedback. So now that we understand that in this technique of and asking open-ended questions and how it is important and for active listening as well as having a very good conversation with others. So now let's move to the next. So the next is the role of paraphrasing and summarizing in active listening. It is also very important, the role of paraphrasing and summarizing. So it is important when that suppose and we are in a setting and where we are making conversation, whether it is a business setting or whether it is in a education setting, we usually face in some kind of interviews and some kind of meetings, that in person-to-person meeting or group meetings. So and we have been sometime and called for the meeting to tell the reports, and that you have been gathered throughout the month. So in that context, and paraphrasing and while listening, paraphrasing and summarizing become very important tools to become active listeners and to become active listeners. So paraphrasing means rephrasing what someone else said in your own words. It shows you get what they are saying, that you are paying attention to the conversation. And summarizing involves expressing the main points and what the speaker said into a brief overview that captures the essence of their masses. So paraphrasing and summarizing both have this capacity to drag the attention of the speaker, that you give the message to the speaker that and you are listening him well. You are listening him or her attentively. So it means that, and if you paraphrase, it means that and you are and paying attention. If you summarizing, it means that and you are you understood the spoken conversation by the speakers. So now let's know it more clearly. Paraphrasing helps you to understand and what a speaker meant by rephrasing their thoughts. It confirms your understanding. Summarizing, on other hand, lets you capture the big pictures and key points and showing you haven't taken in all the information. Paraphrasing is especially effective for dealing with complicated or delicate subject, and because it helps to clarify confusion and make sure that everyone understands things and correctly. So I need to explain this and last point and how and paraphrasing itself. Paraphrasing can work in some typical situation where when you are dealing with some sensitive issue and some delicate subjects, and there and paraphrasing and can save you from getting into confusion, because in paraphrasing is and giving the key points in your own words and that you have understood and key overview that you have understood after listening the speaker words. So and if you express your points in through paraphrasing, that the speaker can understand that what you have understood. So with that, and you don't have any confusion, there will be no confusion in between the speakers and the listeners. So this is what and paraphrasing is. So now I guess and we have understood this and what is the importance of and paraphrasing and summarizing in the context of active listening. So it also a technique for active listening. You have to learn and you have to acquire all these things. So we have already discussed this in three techniques: the role of empathy, role of open-ended questions, and role of paraphrasing and summarizing. So there are many more techniques, and for active listening, you can learn it, and you can learn it in future. There are other techniques you can learn and for your self-study. But and I haven't just accumulated the most important techniques for an active listening. So now I have to summarize and I have to give you this concluding remark and the role of paraphrasing and summarizing in active listening. So To do that, and I would summarize like in short, and paraphrasing and summarizing are important tools for good communication. They show you understand and respect what the speaker is and saying. These techniques bring clarity, show you're paying attention, and make sure everyone understand each other. When used wisely, they make listening better and lead to helpful conversation. So this is all about this. And this is the end of the sensation. And here, and we have discussed so many different points, from listening skills to the importance of active listenings, the idea of an active listenings, and how to develop an active listenings. And in the beginning, we have also discussed on how this listening skill can be learned. So we have already understood, and with these points and that I have discussed, that listening skill and can be learned, and if you study it, and if you try to learn these skills and with these techniques. So now, in the concluding remark of this whole lesson, I would like to conclude it like this. At the end of the session, I would like to say that as you continue to hone your active listening skills, remember that and genuine engagement and empathy are key to establishing meaningful connection and driving success in both professional and personal interaction. So this is all about today's session. So these are the resources that I haven't consulted, and to write this in PPT to make these lectures. So I hope and you will understand this lesson and you utilize it. So this is all about in today's lecture. Hope to see you again in next lecture. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.